And now, from the CFTK-TV studios, this is Open Connection with your host, Robert Pictou.
Welcome to Open Connection. I'm your host, Robert Pictou. Our show today comes to you from the traditional and unceded territory of the Tsimshian people. The grizzly bear, one of the strongest and most impressive mammals in North America, is a symbol of Canadian wilderness. The grizzly is able to run at speeds of 45 kilometers an hour and can weigh 100 to 400 kilograms. On today's Open Connection, we open our archives to bring you this story from 2001.
The grizzly bear. At one time, it called the entire western portion of North America home. But hunting and the loss of habitat through the growth of human communities has reduced the numbers of brown bears in the lower 48 states to only about 1,000. Here in BC, there are still about 13,000 grizzlies, at least according to the provincial government. But those opposed to the hunt say those estimates are way off.
Basically, increasing numbers of scientists are saying that these numbers are probably way off, and that there's been a gross overestimation of the number of grizzly bears.
Bruce Hill is a fisheries researcher for the Sierra Club. He lives in Terrace and has done extensive work in the Kitlope. He's also a hunter, but he says he does not hunt grizzly bears.
For one thing, scientists have proven that they're one of the most sentient beings on the planet. They're as intelligent as the great apes. I don't think society would tolerate hunting gorillas or chimpanzees, and I don't think that we should tolerate hunting grizzly bears. For me, it's a personal choice.
The Sierra Club has called for a province-wide moratorium on grizzly bear hunting until the government can come up with more reliable figures. That's an idea actively opposed by the Guide Outfitters Association of BC, who say if you outlaw the hunt, you won't be doing the species any favors.
Hunting is a management tool, and any species that you are managing, they have to be thinned out. It's no different than growing a garden, for say, where to have a healthy population, you do have to have some thinning and weeding.
I don't see how you can conserve something by killing it.
The Guide Outfitters have begun running radio ads warning that banning grizzly bear hunting would actually endanger humans because the bears would lose their fear of us and their numbers will multiply. They point to the Northwest Territories as an example where grizzly bear hunting is no longer allowed.
The people in the bush that I've talked to, that the bears are coming right in the tents, and that most of the bears being shot are either in your tent or coming through the door of the cabin. They've actually habituated with the people and found that they've totally lost their fear. And this other fellow who works in the Yukon told me in the Yukon the bears act different.
All the scientific evidence that's available would contradict that statement. In fact, there's no scientific proof that hunting of grizzly bears leads to less human mortalities, or that not hunting them would lead to more mortalities. In fact, there's a lot of evidence to the opposite, that it's grizzly bears that are feeding on carcasses left by hunters and things like that are the grizzly bears that are the most dangerous. They become most habituated.
The government is now trying to determine its next course in the debate and is considering the Sierra Club's call for a moratorium. However, not everyone within the NDP caucus likes that idea.
And I've suggested to the folks down in Victoria and my colleagues that what we need to do is have a very comprehensive, well-funded study on the grizzly bear situation, including some look at what's happening to grizzly bear habitat, because there's a lot of discussion around the loss of grizzly bear habitat as being a major factor in terms of the numbers, if the numbers are in decline.
The Sierra Club says the government has a conflicting mandate, with its environmental protection responsibilities at odds with the economics of the hunt, which it says has led the province to treat its own specialists with a heavy hand.
They've gagged provincial scientists, they've disciplined them when these scientists have cautioned that maybe we're not doing as good a job as we should.
If we'd had this discussion or this public debate about the issue when the wildlife biologist was producing the two papers that caused the fur about a year ago, and even there were people that I talked to within my group, colleagues, that suggested the same thing. Yeah, the ministry, I think, overreacted. We should have had that debate, And we should come to some agreement in terms of how do we collect the data and what the interpretations are. And that's why it has to be well funded. It can't be kind of a shoestring study that just kind of glosses over some of the issues. He's right. The issue needs to be looked at, and we need to do that.
Open Connection will be right back after these messages. And now, from the CFTK-TV studios, this is Open Connection with your host, Robert Pictou.
Thank you for staying with us. The arrival port and departure port are two extremely important aspects of a ship's voyage. These procedures are considered critical because of the number of complexities involved with them. Let us return to the archives as Naftilos arrives in Prince Rupert. But first, let's hear more about the grizzly bear hunt.
Yet another area of dispute between the guide outfitters and the Sierra Club is exactly what the economic impact of the grizzly bear hunt is.
We just did a survey on what grizzly bear hunting brings into British Columbia, and just on the non-resident side, last year we had 285 non-resident hunters that came to BC. They harvested 110 grizzly bears, and that contributed over $6 million to the province.
It would not be a huge economic hit to the province. In fact, all evidence is that the ecotourism part of the ecotourism industry in BC is growing at a phenomenal rate. And to do that, people need to see grizzly bears. That's the high point of any trip on this coast, ecotourism trip, is to actually see a grizzly bear. So you could make the case that we're hurting our economic futures by not managing these creatures well.
We've often heard that suggested in terms of forestry, that we should do less logging and have more ecotourism. Whether or not it brings in the same kind of revenue and produces the same kind of wages is something that one can debate for a long time. I haven't seen any actual studies that say that.
And the debate rages on. The outfitters say their numbers show public support for a controlled hunt. The Sierra Club says the public supports a ban, and the government weighs its options as it prepares for a provincial election.
Just launched in October, it's the Naftilos' maiden voyage. Late last week, the Greek-owned vessel put into port in Prince Rupert to pick up a load of grain. As is the custom, whenever a new ship comes in, local officials come aboard to welcome it to the port. The freighter is quite a modern vessel. It has a crew complement of 22, but can be run by just 12 people. It's quite a large vessel as well, and when it's finished loading, it will weigh in at a little over 140,000 tons. The ship's captain, Georgios Sprakis, has been sailing for about 20 years. The Naftilos is his first new vessel as a captain. We were honored enough to have him give us a guided tour of the ship starting on the bridge.
This is for the steering is the latest model. Inside is the gyro, and from here we operate, this actually is the wheel. We have three positions. This is the hand position, in auto position, and no follow-up position. When we are proceeding to the port, always in the hand position, and in the ocean is in auto position. In auto position you can adjust regarding the weather from inside here, and the weather for the radar, the rate, and the pilot watch. And also here is the pilot limit. Actually, we have put here 15 degrees. If it's more than 15 degrees, you can stop, not turning.
How sensitive is the vessel, or how responsive is the vessel to equipment like this? Does it respond pretty quickly, or?
We respond very quickly. When we proceed to the port, we use two motors for safety reasons. And as I told you, this is the latest model, and it responds very quick. It's from hard to port to hard to starboard. It's about 20 seconds only. Our ship is a full GMTSS system. It can operate without a radio officer. Need two officers, deck officers, to have license for GO, general operator, to operate. We have two telexes. This one is the telex C. It's the printer, it's the transmitter, and this one also can operate with batteries for emergency. This one is the C-Tower. Can take, you can use, looks like a telephone, but we have contact with the stations outside. We can send also from here distress verbally, and also here is the distress by telex.
Now, this satellite link-ups, are they? Or?
Yeah, this one is satellite, this one is not. This one, the Inmarsat B, also telex, and this one is the Inmarsat telephone. At any time we can call in any place. This one is the fax. You can fax to any place also from here through Inmarsat.
How strong is the signal? Is it fairly strong? Doesn't matter what kind of weather you're in, or?
Yeah. Anytime, any place can. Just only you change from a different place, different satellite upstairs. We have strong signal. Don't have any problem from this to use. And this is Inmarsat B. You have a straight line. I mean, you can open and give open also in the office that you operate. And in a few seconds you can deliver the telex.
Frakis says the Naftilos and its crew had a fairly long journey coming here, but has an even longer journey ahead.
We sailed from Yokosuka, Japan, and we use RAB line to Prince Rupert. It's about 12 days with average 40 knot speed. And now next destination is Iran in Bandar Abbas through Singapore for bunkers. Present intention is not make great cycle due this season is very strong winds in the north. So I'm planning to come a little bit to south. First we see the forecast, of course, and then we have to cross in the RAB line. We're passing Luzon Strait and then to Singapore.
How long of a trip is that? How many days would it take?
From Prince Rupert to Bandar Abbas, estimate about 32 days.
Open Connection will be right back after these messages. And now, from the CFTK-TV studios, this is Open Connection with your host, Robert Pictou.
Welcome back to Open Connection. Reading is one thing you will use throughout your entire life. While some people will not enjoy reading books, reading is still an important skill to have, and learning to read at a young age can be very beneficial. Let us return to the archives to Kitimat's literacy program, but first, Captain George Spirakis.
Wow, it's a long time to be at sea.
It's not, we can make longer than this one.
How, with a new vessel like this, are you making up any time, or are you just taking it easy, or?
No, it's taken easy, it's no problem, especially if you don't have any problem with the engine. So everything goes smooth without any problem.
Probably the most impressive portion of this ship. Buried in the belly of the vessel, the engine can generate a maximum capacity of 8,800 kilowatts by 116 RPMs and is controlled by a computer.
This engine is automatically increasing the speed by program. This is impossible to put by hand and to up in full speed, let's say in 1-2 minutes. But it wasn't sometimes, and the computer, they increase the speed.
Is this the control right here?
Yeah.
That's...
It's a full control, yes. Now this is finished with engine. When we put standby, the engine is here, and when we are in navigation full, we press this run up.
This is a governance system. This is electronic governance system. Electronic governance system for RPM of the main engine. It's controlling the RPM of the main engine. This one is a control system for all. For the main engine, for temperature, pressure, all. And this one, this is for the safety. If any damages in one temperature or pressure, the main engine stop it. Or slow down or shut down.
As with most jobs these days, the inclusion of more technology in the workplace means that not as many people are needed to run things. In fact, only 4 people work to maintain the engine and its components. The Naftilos started its journey to Iran this week.
When it comes to literacy, researchers are coming to the realization that the younger children begin reading, the better their lives will be.
Well, I think it's really very important because it's just becoming known now in Canada and in BC how important it is that children have these experiences before they're 3, because this part of the brain that's developing only has this small window of chance to develop in that area, and then this is one of the determinants for health farther on down the road.
Tucked away in a corner of the Kitimat General Hospital is the Child Development Center. Maureen O'Connell is the center's speech-language pathologist.
In order for a child to be successful at school, you can greatly increase the chances for that success by giving the child lots of opportunities for literacy at home.
A number of years ago, various groups in Kitimat joined together to form the Early Literacy Committee. The groups had been trying to raise awareness through separate initiatives. Today, the committee is able to focus in a concerted way on various ways of promoting early literacy.
I think that is a very involved community with people that really care. I find we're also very much on the cutting edge of new developments and new knowledge. I think part of it is we're small and we don't have huge bureaucracies we have to go through to start things happening. So I think the Early Literacy Committee is absolutely essential.
According to experts in the field of education and speech-language pathology, literacy is essential to how children learn to communicate.
It's all communication. Communication is something where we exchange information for lots of different reasons. It happens in the real world, and it happens for real things that we need, like shopping lists or reading the paper for information, writing letters. If you think about throughout the day how often you communicate either spoken or written, it happens all the time.
O'Connell stresses the onus lies on parents to turn the television off and open a book with their child.
It's very important to turn off the TV or the video and read to the child. When you watch TV with the child, the TV does not respond to the child. When you read with your child, you are always responding to their child because you as a parent are most sensitive to what the child knows and can do.
It seems strange, but how children learn in their formative years can have a major influence on their lives.
And it seems funny that how well you learn in your first 3 years may determine how long you live, how healthy you will be, and how your life will go.
Open Connection will be right back after these messages. And now, from the CFTK-TV studios, this is Open Connection with your host, Robert Pictou.
In 1865, during the construction of the Collins Overland Telegraph, his party wintered their horses in the valley that would later bear his name. Colonel Charles Bulkley was in charge of the project to link Russian and American telegraph systems by way of Alaska. In this final segment of Open Connection, we return to the archives to learn about the early pioneers of the Bulkley Valley.
It wasn't too long ago that pioneers made their way to the Bulkley Valley, determined to make a life for themselves in an area many thought was impossible to populate. But with hard work, some hard times and perseverance, they made it. And the sons and daughters of many of those early Bulkley Valley pioneers still live in the valley and are keen to share their stories. Daintree Riffle's parents came to Telkwa between 1916 and 1919.
This is my mom, and she came to Telkwa in 1919 with her father and family. Her father had been in the First World War, and they sent them up here. They had what they called veterans' land that they could get, so that's how they came to Telkwa, the family. And my mom got a job working in the Royal Bank in Telkwa in 1919. And my dad came to Telkwa in 1916, so he was already in Telkwa. And they both ended up working in the Royal Bank in Telkwa.
Her parents then moved to Smithers in 1924, and her father worked at the then popular Watson's grocery store for 12 years before opening up his own grocery store. It's still in the family today, but is now known as the Goodacre Super Value. Reg and Jean Heal's parents and grandparents were also some of Smithers' first pioneers.
I think in the year of 1903, my grandfather and the eldest son came in. Fred came in and checked over the land.
Reg Heel says his family finally settled in Smithers sometime around 1906, and it was tough going for the family.
You see, there was nothing built when they come into the country. They had to have something, and what they did was kind of logged up the side of and then put the roof part was a tent.
And while the Heel family was farming their land and building their new home, Pat McCammon's family was also determined to make a life in the valley. Her father came to Canada from England in 1909, her mother from Idaho around the same time. The two families met up while on their way north. They arrived in the valley sometime around 1911, and even through the most difficult of times, when they had no money and nothing to eat, they were still determined to get here.
My father he was just determined, and up until he died at 93 in 1982, he said this was the place to be, and it was such a privilege and an education to be with the people that he lived with here, the early pioneers, and he was determined to preserve the history of the valley, and he saved many, many things, and was the instigator of the present museum, and he didn't live to see it turn out as well as it is now.
And the Bulkley Valley Museum is what is keeping those memories of what's in store, of the tents the pioneers spent winters in, the paddle boats along the Bulkley River, and the stories these men and women remember alive. Museum assistant Jane Young says those artifacts are extremely valuable to the museum and must be taken care of very carefully.
Well, we try to keep them so that their temperature doesn't fluctuate too much. We've got a special storage in the back, and we make sure that they're not available for humidity to build up, because that will break down their structure faster. And other than that, we just keep an eye on them and make sure they're not degrading at all.
Young says they're proud of the Pioneer display. It's even been taken on the road.
The Pioneer Museum that the folks were interviewed in front of is actually a temporary exhibit. It was done by Lillian Weedmark, the curator. I'm not sure when it was put together, I believe 95. And this exhibit actually went down to the Victoria Museum for a while. It was on display for an example of what small community museums are doing and can do. So we're quite proud of it.
And the relatives of those who made their way to the valley all those years ago are happy to have their memories preserved, so those from future generations have a chance to learn and look back on a proud Bulkley Valley history.
Knowing that I am accomplishing something for all them hurting people out there, I'm doing it for my residential school court case. It got thrown out. They said that it was too old.
People have been stopping, non-First Nations and First Nations alike, and stopping or driving slow and honking like crazy and donating, here's a toonie, here's a loonie, this is to help you with your gas, and that's the type of support she needs. She needs to know, and she's doing this for her own healing, and it's exciting. It's exciting to see the survivors just getting up and saying, okay, now we're going to do this, and now it's time for healing.
Thank you for staying with us for this episode of Open Connection. The greatest distance in the existence of man is not from here to there, but the connection from his mind and heart. If we can conquer that distance, we can soar like an eagle and realize our immensity within. I'm Robert Picktow.